My name is Adam, and I just want to share a quick video on my experience moving this hot tub. I ordered a hot tub from Wayfair.com, and it took about, I don't know, a month and a half to get to the house, and I was anxious that whole time about how to get it moved, how I thought I was going to get it moved. I knew they were heavy, and I thought they would appear or show up sort of on a pallet like this. The guys showed up, and I asked them to put it in the garage, but it turns out it was too tall to go in the garage. And so I had them move it sort of as far down this little sidewalk as they could. And what you see is about what they left, though you can see I've already started thinking about how to get it moved on my own. I should tell you that this video is just me and a few pictures, and so if that's annoying to you, you might want to skip ahead or something. But let's go through quickly these pictures. The idea that I had was to put wheels under, or plan A rather, was to get these wheels from Harbor Freight. They were about $18. These rigid casters or 10-inch pneumatic wheels. I was able to get a car jack under it and get these wheels bolted to the front. And I wanted to sort of make like a big wheelbarrow. The idea was to put these wheels here and then maybe some long handles or something on the other end so I could just pick it up and roll it. Where it was going is actually down a hill a little ways, and so I had gravity helping, which turned out to be a very good thing. It was heavier than I realized, and I was not able to lift, even with some leverage. I was not able to lift the other end, but I basically just leaned against it on the other end here, and it budged. And I thought, well, maybe I can just push this thing. And so that's what I did. I had my wife sort of driving, and then I just pushed the thing. And you can see this is down the corner and down the hill. I put this board here to stop it rolling into this ditch. I had to put a board across this ditch to get it through there. And I was able just to push it down the hill. I was really surprised at how easily my plan worked. It rolled down the hill quite well. And I had to take, on this picture you see, I actually took this piece of, this section of fence out. Plan A was to go through the gate, but the pallet was wider than the gate opening. I also did not want to mess up this, not that it's nice or anything, but I didn't want to mess up all of this rock and have to deal with it getting bogged down in the rock. So it worked. You can see what's left of that little ditch right there, but I just took the fence apart, and that's easier than you'd think it ought to be. You just take the fence apart, and I just pushed the thing, just me basically. I just pushed it down there and was able to roll it into place. And that night, I'm looking to see if I have a picture. Oh, I do. That night we had a storm coming, and so I was afraid of the wind blowing it over. I didn't want to do that, so I got it in position and strapped it to this post, or it's just tied to this post, and that's where it stayed after day one. And that took me about 3 hours, honestly, to get the wheels mounted to it and get it pushed down the hill. And so that was good enough for day one. After about 3 hours, that worked pretty well. The next day, and all the while, I'd sort of been thinking about how to get it onto this patio. This is where it's gonna eventually live. And what I thought that I wanted to do was to get it into position and sort of lift this edge of the, I'm looking ahead to my other pictures, somehow lever this edge of this pallet up onto the patio. And I actually do not have a great picture of that, but what I was able to do is get a long 2x6. Here's the 2x6 I used. I was able to get that 2x6 under this in a way that I was actually able to lever this end of the pallet up onto the patio, and from there I was able to get it on these little dollies here, and now it's on wheels all around. And I was really surprised at how well the whole thing just rolls around. Once it's on a smooth flat surface, it just rolled around. But now there was the real challenge of setting it down into place. And honestly, I had the hardest time getting the wheels off of it. I did not have something that would let it jack down low enough, and so I was constantly sort of going back and forth between this board and that board and that sort of thing. And finally it was an old set of hand trucks, these hand trucks here. I was able to get that thin little lip on the hand trucks under the bottom of that pallet well enough to get it and let it down. Here's some other pictures of my progress in getting the wheels on it. So now I've got it pretty well in place, and I've got to let it down. And my plan for letting it down was I built this frame. These are just 2x4s that are actually screwed into the pallet. There's a 2x6 spacer and another 2x6 spacer on its edge that is just spanning and keeping those 2x4s from squeezing together. And then I don't know if these little angle things were any use or not, but it seemed to help. And so the idea was to use this part of the deck here. And what I did sort of a twofold system. I had a winch. There's just a winch and a battery with a remote. That was really handy, having the remote. But I also had rigged up sort of a belay system so there's the winch rope. And then I had this belay system that was doubled up using these turnbuckles. And you can see the tail of that runs over here, and it was sort of a safety so that if the winch failed for whatever reason, I would still have to let out slack using this belay system, and that worked pretty well. And you can see the beginnings of my idea on getting it to tilt forward here. I just took my car jack and put it under the edge there, and that worked really well. I started jacking it up, and it started to tilt over. And as it would tension these cables, I would let out a little bit of slack, and so it would go and it would tilt, and I would let out slack. And I had the plan to let it down onto these dollies. That turned out to be a mistake because it was not centered or balanced very well. I should have just let it all the way down to the ground. I had to move and adjust my jack a couple of times because it was not tall enough, but eventually it got over top dead center, and it was doing its own work, and I didn't have to use the jack at all. But at that point I had already committed to my system, and I was by myself this whole time. And I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but I was by myself doing this. And so I would let out a little bit of slack on one rope and a little bit of slack on the other. And when I would let out one, the other would sort of tension up. And that actually worked really well. A problem that I had, and it's potentially dangerous, and I did not anticipate this, before the hot tub would get top dead center, it had a tendency to want to rock back. And it did that twice. It rocked back, and fortunately it landed back onto the jack that was there. If it had not landed on the jack and it had decided to rock back onto me or into this deck, then who knows, that would have been a problem. I was really trying to be careful with this thing. I didn't want to shift it. I really didn't want to torque it at all, because I've never had one of these before, and I was real anxious about damaging this very expensive bathtub that I've purchased. But anyway, I let it down just a couple of inches at the time, and eventually it got to where it was ready to go, whether I wanted it to or not. I was just letting it down. Something that I should have planned for a bit better was this pallet. Once the hot tub got sort of over on its edge, it had a tendency to want to push the pallet out from under itself. And in that case, your ropes go slack. You see I have doubled up everything here. Your ropes go slack, and then all is lost. So, I don't have a picture of it, but what I did at about this point in the process is I took a big piece of chain, and I actually chained the front of the pallet back to that post. Where's my picture? Back to this post, and there's another one further down. I chained the pallet here so that the pallet could not slip away. I should have planned for that better in the beginning, but eventually it came on down, and at that point it was just a matter of getting the wrapper off of it. I did get it centered on these dollies, and which was good actually, because I had to rotate the whole thing. The power for it was on one of these corners, and I wanted the power that we ran, which is a whole different adventure, is behind this post here, and so I needed to rotate it a little bit, but that's where it sits, and we got in it, and it works great. Did not have any obvious problems with it, so my system worked for me. I don't know that I would recommend it for anybody else. I certainly learned a lot, and if I had to do it again, I'd probably do something like that. So hopefully that's helpful if you're in the same position I was and you're looking at trying to move one of these things. I would say use lots of brain power and not so much muscle power, because you will mess up your back and other joints. Go ahead and invest in some levers like this 2x6 I had laying around, and that thing turned on edge. I can pretty much lever anything into place, and that worked really well for me. So anyway, hope that was good, and good luck with your project.